And then you have what's called as a conflicting system. Now again, these are different questions that we could pose or that we have posed to us. And this is regardless of the evidence and reasoning within a conflicting system. Better or worse answers. You have to make a judgment. And here's a great example of that. And what's your name, Miss? Amanda. So, where's your take on capital punishment? Are you for capital punishment or against capital punishment? Okay? So, what do you think, Miss? Do you think that we should have the gate down on the border or we shouldn't have the gate on the border? What am I doing here? It's judgment. It's something that I have to compare, and I actually have to be able to come up with, evidence to be able to reason and logic and say, well, it says. But again, too, is you can ask those questions too. So you got one, okay? You've got none, and of course you have this system of ability to be able to have a conflicting system. There's either or. There is for or against. Are you for abortion or are you against abortion? See, we have a conflicting system here. So now we really have to think critical thinking because we have to think about the concepts of life. We have to think about the concepts of revenue, of concepts of is this right, is it wrong? Is it religiously right? Is it religiously wrong to kill somebody? So all these things going into this convicting system. And again, it's really subjective because now again too is you're forming an opinion. You're having to judge as compared to I simply come up here and say, hey, water will actually boil at this temperature. So that's specific and that's correct. How do you make something correct when we start talking about capital punishment, about abortion? Where's the right and wrong answer here? So you see how on one spectrum you have what? You have one system, and all the way over here on this one, we have a conflicting system. And believe it or not, all in the middle is a wide variety of questions that we can ask or that we can take. Now, why is the big deal behind asking questions? Well, again, we question concepts. We use questioning to make decisions. Anytime that we have to make a decision, it can be something as small as, again, at lunchtime finding something to eat, like Amanda said. What about which classes should I take? Where am I going to live? What is my career going to be? If I wanted to take a look at my career from aviation as opposed to culinary arts, what are the pros and cons? So you start to see the systems here. Okay? Another thing is that we use questions when we ask, when we're reading, when we're writing, when we're dealing with ethics, and we're dealing with our academic disciplines. You want a really key thought here? You really want to know how to master your content in whatever area that you're learning? When you sit down and you study, right? You pick up your book and you look at it and you do what? A little highlighter, a couple of notes. Do you ever ask questions as you're looking at that content and to be able to ask academic questions that focus on that discipline? Like if we were in biology. So what is the total impact or what is the so importance of these different elements of a structure or of a cell? How does the nucleus split and what are the effects of it as they're going through? See, if we don't ask those type of questions, what do? We simply look at the information, we memorize it, and do we really actually learn? Do we really understand those concepts behind biology, behind nursing, behind the anatomy of man, behind computers, electronics, robotics, solar power? We've got to be able to ask questions according to our discipline. We've got to be able to ask questions if we're going to make good informed decisions. Question is the root to any type of information and helping us to be able to use critical thinking, again, to make good informed decisions. They are one of the most vital elements when you see in the elements of thoughts is the ability to be able to ask questions. How do you know what the problem is? How do you know what the symptom is? What can we do to resolve this issue if we don't ask questions? And that's why it's so important. Now, would you do me a favor and flip on the other side of this pamphlet? And on it, you're going to take a look at some questions. Now, these are some questions to ask yourself as a learner. Would you do me a favor? I want you to do this. I want you to go down to, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I want you to go down to the 5th bullet. Look at that one real quick. Let's see if anybody can come to the cross. Do you ever test yourself before coming to class by trying to summarize orally and writing the main points of the previous class meeting? If I cannot summarize main points, I haven't learned them. Would you agree to that? Do you really actually sit there? Can you actually summarize Or here, better yet, let's try this. During a lecture, do you actively listen for the main points? If the lecturer had stopped at a various point, like I'm talking right now, how about if I do this? I'm going to stop talking. Amanda, go up and see Mary right now. She has some paper and she has some pencils. What I want you to do right now is I want you to summarize in succulent detail everything that I talked about in the last 20 or 30 minutes. Could you do that? Could you effectively summarize that without looking at your pamphlet? Okay? Have you been asking yourself questions a long time here? Well, how can I apply this? Am I really using good questions? Can you actually summarize that in your anatomy class, in your health class, in your biology class, in your math class? Do you sit there and you summarize as you're going along? And at any given point, if that instructor was to stop, could you confidently be able to look at yourself and go, yeah, I can summarize the main points. They were this and this and this and this. Do you ever ask yourself, whether it's orally or in your mind, questions about what your instructor is going over, what your boss is going over? Or better yet, how about this? What you're actually seeing on TV or reading in the magazine article. Are you be able to sit there and pick everything apart and look at it and be able to ask yourself questions and discern whether it is factual, valid information that you're going to believe? Or are you simply going to go hook and crook and believe everything and activate your ignorance and go, oh, wow, that's really happening? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Or, wow, that's what this guy is? Because one thing that you're going to see, and it's happening already, and it's going to go on until next year, that you will see this extremely big in play that you'll have to ask questions is, guess what? The presidential election. Don't you think, here we are. Rick Perry for president. Yes, I'm a long-standing member. I've been in the military. I believe in family values. I do this. And you see the American flag raising up to the side. You may see it from Obama. And what do you believe? Do you ask questions? Do you take a look at their policies? Do you see if they align with your beliefs? Believe it or not, all too many people, you would be amazed. When a couple of years ago, when Obama actually came to election, I asked people, don't be afraid. I said, I want to know how many of you actually, voted for President Obama. But before you do that and you raise your hand up, I want to ask you this. How many questions, how much research you did? How many questions, how much of a background did you take a look at it, see what his policies were, see his voting, exactly what he voted for, what he didn't vote for, before you walked into that booth and you simply pulled that because he really sounded good? And President Obama, I give him all hands. He is a great presenter. He can get up there and make you cry and American flag, but with any elected official or anybody, it could be your friends, it could be your professor. Do you ask questions? You'd be able to sit there and actually start discerning and start picking it apart by using the elements of thought or the critical thinking standard to say, well, wait a minute, what did he just say? That really wasn't clear. Could you elaborate that? Could you kind of give me an illustration or an example? Or better yet, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Could you really tell me what the purpose or objective of this is? So we start to ask questions. We can use the elements of thought, or we can use intellectual standards to help us to be able to go ahead and pick something apart and to be able to discern whether we're going to believe it or not.